Hey, good afternoon, and welcome to this. What is it? March 18th, 2021 edition
Thursday.
of Midday Market. It is Thursday. It is Thursday, Kaylee. How are you this morning, by the way, or
You
this
know,
afternoon?
I'm pretty good. Didn't have an overindulgent St. Patrick's Day yesterday, so no green beer hangover for me. Good news there.
Yeah, those days for me are long behind me, but I get it that there's people that were a little bummed. Second year in a row, right? I mean, it was just
Yeah.
kind of next year is going to be, I guess, like Bloomberg said, revenge spending. Next year will be revenge drinking on St. Patty's Day, probably.
All I know is last year for me, St. Patty's Day was kind of like the day before the world ended. Like me and my friends were hanging out, we were having a good time, and then everyone was like, oh, everything's shutting down because of COVID. So that was kind of like my 1 year. What is this life we've been living for the last year?
Oh, man, that was your last hurrah. Yeah,
Our
I get
last
it.
hurrah.
Yeah. Yeah, I went to Modex, with about 25,000 people, and the end of that week, we shut down and went home. That was it. It was over. Boom,
Can't
done.
imagine a crowd of 25,000 right anymore, right?
Yeah, yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. But hey, we got a great show today. Let's get to it, right? We
Great
got
show as always.
Yeah, and it's interactive. It's interactive as well as always. It's twice weekly. It's interactive. Get on FreightWaves LinkedIn, Facebook channels. I'm going to get into LinkedIn as Kevin Hill used to say. I'm going to dial in through my modem here into LinkedIn
Yeah.
in a second. Here, get your comments and questions in, and we'll. Kaylee she's all knowing, so ask her any question you want, and she'll be able to answer it in great detail.
That is a
But
lot
no,
of pressure for my second show.
but seriously, doesn't it seem like you should have to go through more than one rodeo to be an expert? I hate that. This is my first rodeo. Well, it's your second, so therefore you're an expert.
I mean, I
All
guess, I'm listening to this
right.
podcast right now that's all about like interviewing experts. And I'm like, dang, I'm really not an expert in anything.
Neither are they. That's the trick. But we do have some really good and interesting and smart people. We got Russ Jones, CEO and co-founder of Cargo Chief, is going to be on. We'll be
Hmm.
talking about winning the freight markets with him, and then we have the co-founders of a new company, an up-and-coming company, just a new startup, Enroute.AI. Neil Fernandez and Mike Anthony. They're optimizing final mile delivery. They got some really cool stuff that they're just starting. Met these guys a few weeks ago. Great guys. So we'll talk to those guys and understand what they're doing. We got Nick Austin talking weather here.
Yep.
As usual, right? I mean, there was some weather yesterday, as many people know. We were
Was a
talking
big
before this,
day.
Kaylee. Hopefully, we didn't have any loss of life. I didn't see anything reported that was
I've seen a
anything
lot
big.
of damage reports so far. I really haven't seen any injury or death reports, so that's good news. But as I'm sure Nick will tell us, we still have that ongoing severe weather off towards the coast today. So Georgia, Carolinas are still on alert.
Yeah, and we rode through on the Chattanooga effect, which Nick will tell you is an actual
Hmm.
thing. It's interesting, the Chattanooga effect. I never knew it till I moved here and would yell at the storms that would come right up to my house, and split and go around, and there's my lawn, brown and dead, no rain. But
No rain.
and of course we got Zach Strickland and Anthony Smith as well with us. But first we got Andrew Cox. Should we go to Andrew Cox with the headlines?
Let's hear what's making news today.
Andrew, how do you got for us, my friend?
Hey team, I've got some exciting news on XPO's new spinoff company. The anticipated unveiling of what the new company name would be came out this morning or just yesterday afternoon. It's going to be called GXO Logistics. CEO Brad Jacobs said that the three letters stand for the game-changing opportunities that the company is bringing to the table for its customers, its employees, and its shareholders. GXO will take the legacy of XBO into the future as an independent public company. The spinoff must receive board approval in the second half of the year, but all signs point to that happening. XBO's chief executive officer of Europe, Malcolm Wilson, will be taking the lead as CEO of GXO, and the company expects the spinoff to create long-term value for shareholders. So expecting that to come here in the second half of the year, but we have a new name from XBO Logistics for its new spinoff. It will be GXO Logistics.
Very
Awesome.
cool. Brad Jacobs creates value for stakeholders. So
Yes.
I think that goal and the expectations are warranted. Right? I think they will. And by the video that's there, they're going to have their hands in all kinds of automation type of stuff. Really cool looking stuff. I love all those robotics and the automated warehouses, et cetera. It's going to be really cool stuff. What an
Mhm.
interesting thing to be doing.
Yeah, XPO invests billions every year on technology and has some of the best technology in the freight and logistics world. And as you said, Brad Jacobs is almost solely focused on creating shareholder value. That's one of the great things I get when I listen to him talk. He is so focused on creating value for shareholders, and this is just another way for him to do that.
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely. The other thing that I love about him and is not to be fanboy or anything silly like that, but he loves to get up on stage and not practice, right? When he was our keynote speaker and he got up there for questions, he refused to see any of the questions beforehand and just got up there and just took random questions from people, which is really a gutsy move, but he's well versed at it and really good to do that. What's happening in the world of maritime?
Well, there's a lot going on. We have lots of port congestion and high demand, but we got some results from ocean carrier Hapag-Lloyd, and it was exceptional performance for the full year, 2020 as a whole. Hapag-Lloyd's net profit for the year was up a staggering 155% to over $1 billion. The full year EBITDA was up nearly 40% over 2019, and EBIT, earnings before interest and taxes, was up 65% year over year. Hapag-Lloyd said one of the main drivers of the improved results were cost savings of more than $500 million, as well as, get this, slightly improved freight rates and lower bunker prices. It was a roller coaster year in 2020 for the entire ocean industry. The year started off fairly strong, but then was completely derailed in February, March, and April as COVID shut down the country and shut down China even before then. So if you look at the year-over-year totals, which we're going to speak to in Lorianne's headline coming up in a moment, they're being distorted right now. Import volumes are up 60% for the month of February because those Chinese ports were shut down. But the third and fourth quarters were a godsend to the carriers. Cargo surged in the back half of the year, bringing the full year total for Hapag-Lloyd just under the 2019 total for volume, so only down 1.6% year over year. If you would have told Hapag-Lloyd in March that total year-end volumes were only down 1.6%, I think they would have been very happy. And the revenue surge made the year for Hapag-Lloyd. The whole year revenue was only up 3.3%, but with the cost savings initiatives, the company was able to have a very successful financial year. They were able to pay down $1.3 billion in debt and proposed a dividend of over $4. Kaylee.
So that's pretty awesome that they were able to do that even in this year where COVID was absolutely nuts. What was the big kind of driving force behind that net profit besides just those cost cutting measures?
Well, we've got a puppy, an excited puppy. So yeah, they were able to put in some strong cost savings, but it's just the e-commerce. It's the consumer and government aided drive that pushed these carriers towards a profitable year and really saved the year in the back half. They were able to manage capacity pretty well throughout the downfall in demand in the early year, and were able to save rates a little bit. But in the back half of the year, they're at full capacity running. Rates are up 4x from China to the West Coast where they were this time last year. I mean, things are just going pretty well in the carrier's favor right now. Mike, I think we have some sonar data that you wanted to point to, so our listeners could go and check out some of the trends.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, I think your puppy's a little upset about the statement of slightly better rates or
Yeah,
slightly.
I
Slightly
think that's
better rates is the understatement of the year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I saw that. I heard you, Andrew, say, "Check this out." And check this out. In case you hadn't noticed, rates were a little bit higher. I don't. Can we show these charts that I made up? So this first one here, and we're talking about sonar and the things that you can see in maritime, and I love the maritime data that we have inside here. This is relatively new stuff over the last. When did we introduce this in the fall? I guess we brought out these things here. This is showing you actual bookings 7 days out of imports. I have it selected to imports from China to all ports in the United States. And you can change this to any specific port in the United States or all trade company or countries to all trade ports in the United States, et cetera. But you can see this. This is showing you 7 days out, and the blue line showing you the this year versus last year in the yellow. The top part is actual shipments, number of shipments. And a shipment can be a TEU or 100 TEUs. But then at the bottom, you're looking at the actual number of TEUs. And Andrew, you can see where that spike starts happening in those number of TEUs when you start looking at the end of March. And you can see March 5th, the shipments start to come back too. And this is off of that extreme dip that was out there. If we go to the other chart, I can show you year over year the imports coming into the United States. This is showing you year over year on the left hand side. Import shipments by destination port or in the United States. You can see them year over year this past week. On the right hand side is showing you the last year of imports, the trend Los Angeles. and you can see it coming back out of that trough that happened there right when COVID hit and everything shut down. And if you remember, they were blanking like all the sailings, and then they had to come back, and they didn't have enough ships to cover everything. Right, Andrew?
Right, that's exactly right. It's been a whipsaw on both demand and supply for the ocean industry throughout 2020, and it seems like 2020 or 2021 will be a year we're expecting some of that relief in the middle of the year, towards the back end of the year. There are some capacity green shoots happening. We see the container exchange capacity or container capacity index out of China is improving. We've also seen spot rates kind of stop taking legs up and have paused for a moment. But that doesn't mean that the demand is going anywhere. As Lorianne LaRocco reported just this morning, she talked about how you shouldn't expect any abatement in import demand anytime soon. While I'm still waiting on my stimulus check, I'm calling on you, President Biden. Haven't gotten mine. Most of my friends and colleagues have gotten theirs. But the fact is that these stimulus checks have a direct correlation to e-commerce spending. Seco Logistics says that there is a direct correlation. They said that after the first round of stimulus checks in March 2020, they saw e-commerce jump by over 100%, orders that is, jump over by over 100%. And after that first wave of increased orders, Seco actually instituted a stimulus execution plan that is still in place today and has been kind of revamped as the new stimulus checks come out. Warehouses are working around the clock at Seco Logistics operations, and they're actually looking to add robotics to supplement some of their human capacity. And like I said, we've seen inklings of some capacity relief ahead, but that doesn't mean that demand is going anywhere. The pandemic has been an absolute boon for Chinese exporters. We have here a sonar chart that we can highlight some of our sonar data from Chinese imports to the U.S. There it is. Well, this is actually the port of Baltimore, which is my next point. The congestion has actually forced importers to revert away from the West Coast in some cases. So they're looking towards the Panama Canal and the Suez Canal. And so carriers here are not the only winners in this trade movement. Some East Coast ports have been major beneficiaries of this trade movement as well. Here we're highlighting the port of Baltimore, which is home to 4 Amazon distribution centers, which is obviously a big help for import volumes. But here, the port of Baltimore and East Coast ports in general have been some of the biggest beneficiaries of this COVID buying boom as well.
Yeah, and you know what, Andrew, it's kind of an additional shot in the arm or cause for this to happen. I'm struggling for the word though, because when we started going into the trade wars and the tariffs during the Trump administration, we started to see sourcing change from actually China to further down in the Indonesian peninsula, et cetera. And it was actually faster to come through the Suez and to the East Coast. We started to see this trend start then, right?
Yeah, this has been a developing trend that did start back when the trade tariffs began. People look towards Taiwan, and even further south to Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnam to replace China as our major importer. I mean, you can't replace China. The truth is that we're very much dependent on China, and that's been even proven throughout the COVID-19 pandemic that we've become more dependent on them. But as they did try to revert and shift supply chains away from China, they started using the Suez Canal then, and it's continued to be used now. Even stuff coming from China, not the Suez, but the Panama rather, to bring things to the East Coast because they're trying to avoid that West Coast port congestion.
Yeah, it's interesting. And go ahead, Kaylee. Sorry.
I was going to ask, Andrew, so you said you're still waiting on your stimulus. I just got mine, but at this point, it's kind of like, how much more stuff can we buy, right? Do you think that more people are going to be kind of holding on to that money in hopes of, hey, summer's coming up, warm months are coming up? Saw something about Dr. Fauci and Biden saying by 4th of July, you guys should be good to hang out and gather freely again. Do you think people are going to hang on to it or be like, buy more things for my house?
Well, Kaylee, that is a lovely segue into my point of sale plug for the day. I wrote about how furniture and fireworks may be something that we're missing during the 4th of July. So I'll come back to fireworks, but furniture is something that I expected to see exactly that, Kaylee. I expected to see Americans beginning to rein in that spending in anticipation for a wider economic reopening, planning for fall vacations and such. But that's just not what's happening. We're seeing ridiculous demand for furniture. The U.S. Department of Commerce, their numbers were up 12% in February, while retail sales were down as a whole. So they were one of the leading categories in the month of February. And if you look at the Bank of America data, it's still up 35% year over year. Furniture spending is over 2019 and over 2020. So furniture spending has not gone anywhere. So I think there's two takeaways here, and there's two possibilities. It's either that the shift back to services is not going to be as severe as I first initially thought, or it's the fact that American balance sheets are strong enough that they can continue spending on goods without fear of being unable to afford the autumn vacays. And in any case, that is both cases are very good for the trucking industry.
It's very relatable. I'm looking at buying new furniture right now, actually getting ready to move and fill a new place. Looking at furniture, and you're talking 8, 10, 12-week delivery times. And I'm like, well, I should have ordered a couch back around Christmas.
Yeah, the Lazy Boy CEO, Kurt Darrow, said that customers are waiting an unprecedented 5 to 9 months on orders right now. It's absolutely unbelievable, the time that people are having to wait for furniture. Our own CEO, Craig Fuller, is building out a nursery, and he's waiting on products that he ordered 3-4 months ago. Still haven't come. A lot of the nursery equipment and the furniture that's going to be put in there, still waiting on that. Something else Americans still might be waiting for is fireworks. If you want the average American to finally wake up to the problems at the ports, I think I've got the story for you. The National Fireworks Association has written to Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg to request that he and his department immediately examine our nation's ports to see where the bottlenecks are. Because if the ports are not cleared within the next few weeks, the fireworks industry fears that fireworks season may not take place at all this year. And Americans love fireworks. We shoot off nearly 1 pound of fireworks for every man, woman, and child in the country. That number's doubled since 2000, where we shot off roughly 0.5 pound. Americans love fireworks, and 90% of them come from China. So just like everything else coming from the sea, delays are very widespread. And beyond the port congestion, the fireworks industry has also been impacted by the ocean overspills the ocean overflows on the sea we've seen. The one APIS that lost 1,700 containers back in December, of those, 54 of them held fireworks. So it's going to be tough to get fireworks into the country this year, which I also think there's one little silver lining here, that we may get more drone lighting, more acceleration of drone lighting projects, which I think are even cooler than fireworks. So there's one silver lining there.
Andrew, you're so misguided, my friend. A drone.
Have you seen the intel?
We've had this conversation over other things before, but now I'm really putting my foot down. There's no way drones are cooler than fireworks.
I'll send you a video. They are pretty neat. They're only getting better. They're going to get really. They're going to be very encompassing. They're very cool.
They are very cool, but they'd be even better if they'd like form targets I could shoot them, like skeet.
There's nothing better than just making something explode on 4th of July. Like that's really as American as it gets.
That's what I'm talking about, Kaylee. That's what I'm talking about. Come to my house on 4th of July and see us. I blow up way more than 1 pound per head. I'll tell you that.
I was honestly, the last thing I'll say before I get off, I was surprised to hear about the history of fireworks. I've always found the celebration of them kind of strange. Like it's obviously a traditional Chinese celebration, but we've adopted it. But it dates back all the way to the original Independence Day. I'm forgetting the name of one of the founding fathers, but he wrote that the celebration needs to be celebrated with illuminations. The next year in 1777, the first Congress celebrated in Philadelphia with fireworks illuminations.
Nice.
I feel like that's something Benjamin Franklin would say. Yeah, I could see him being a fireworks guy.
I will have my P's and Q's next time. Sorry, I didn't have that.
Your pints and quarts. That's where that comes from. Did you know that? Look that up. Where did P's and Q's come from?
Pints and quarts.
All right. Well, everybody, if you want access to point of sale, you can find everything that I write archived on FreightWaves.com. You can just go FreightWaves.com/POS. You can sign up there simply with your email and find some of the archive stories and episodes there. Thanks, guys.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrew. So, hey, the topic at hand, besides freight, is weather, right, Kaylee?
Talk about some fireworks. The Southeast yesterday, lightning, thunder, tornadoes, high winds, hail, rain, you name it, hit. You're still seeing impacts of that all across the East Coast. Nick Austin's got an update for you in your weather segment.
That's right, guys. Several states across the South got slammed by that severe weather yesterday, mainly in the afternoon and evening. Happened anywhere from Texas and Oklahoma over to Georgia. So it was across a pretty broad area, but most of it was in Alabama and Mississippi. Those are the two states that really took the brunt of the severe weather. 25 tornado reports, according to the National Weather Service. Most of those were in Mississippi and Alabama. Nearly 130 reports of damaging winds and large hail. And again, a large percentage of those reports were from Mississippi and Alabama. Not a big blow to freight flows as far as the overall big picture. But localized areas, yes, disruptions in supply chains, issues for some drivers out there. But really the main thing about severe storms and an outbreak like this is not that they necessarily cause long-term impacts on freight flows, but immediate impacts and risks to life and property for drivers that are out on the roads. So those are the main issues. Now, the severe threat for today, it's still out there. It has shifted eastward. So for the rest of today, the best chances for tornadoes, severe crosswinds out there, large hail, are going to be across South Carolina from Columbia to Myrtle Beach and Charleston, up to the eastern half of North Carolina, and maybe even in some parts of Southern Virginia and northeastern Florida. That's where we're going to see the best chances for today. So lots of interstate travel impacted there. And those storms will then fade out late this afternoon and into the early part of the evening. Now, coming up later in the show, I'm going to talk to you about more periods of heavy snow coming back to the high elevations of the Northwest and also the Sierra Nevada. And we'll talk about a new article that just went up on the website yesterday for St. Patrick's Day about the worst cloverleaf highway interchanges out there for drivers, according to a survey of drivers. Trying to have a little fun with that one. Cloverleaf, St. Patrick's Day. More about that coming up later in the show.
Nick, you got to bury the joke with that one. Just gotta let the joke happen.
Yeah. It's not really that funny of a joke if you have to explain it.
It's fine.
No, it's great. I love Nick. Nick is awesome. So more snow coming, I guess. We'll catch up with Nick at the end of the show as well as we normally do. So let's check out Zach Strickland and the freight markets. He's got an update for us.
Hey guys, so the market continues to show kind of this slow retraction. Tender rejections dropping to 26.2% today versus the 26.3% yesterday. So not a lot of movement in the market, not a lot of volatility, but we do have some movement in areas around the country. Some of the largest markets are having some strong activity. The Atlanta market we continue to watch, as well as the Los Angeles market. Los Angeles has a slight uptick in rejection rates, still hovering right around that 17-18% level. Capacity seems to be somewhat regulating right now out there. Atlanta, though, tender rejection rates up around 25% in one of the largest markets. After a strong several-day increase, now we're starting to pull back just a little bit in that market. Now, the big story, though, outside of those areas showing some signs of stabilization, is the Houston market. Now, the Port of Houston had a huge week last week, breaking records in terms of total TEU volumes, and the tender rejection rate is actually showing it at this point. So tender rejection rates jumping all the way up to 19.7%. Basically, strongest since the big winter outbreak, winter storm event back in the middle of February. Or it did get right over 20%. But this is a longer running trend. This isn't just some sort of spiking and short-term event. This looks more like a longer running type situation where tender rejection rates have slowly climbed from under 15% back up to near 20% over the past week and a half or so. So volumes continue to be very strong in the Houston market. Now, we did have a little bit of a lull on the import side. So we're tracking some of the imports in SONAR, looking at CSTM. So the BOLs, the number of shipments coming through and clearing customs, did have a very strong showing last week, and they did kind of die down. But looking into the future and the inbound shipments index, so these are the bookings that have probably about a 4 to 6 week lead time before they hit the United States and hit the surface freight. They're showing an even stronger push coming up here in about a month or so.
Very interesting stuff, Zach. Thank you so much. And Kaylee, we were talking about this a little bit earlier before the show, and talking about this with Andrew as well, talking about the effects of which really started with the trade wars and the tariffs and moving things around, right? And then COVID changed this, and now you're starting to see this stuff when we first started seeing this with the tariff wars or with the trade wars, um, you start to see not only this change in the maritime routes, right? But then the entry port into the United States has implications and sometimes severe implications on the infrastructure for moving the freight within the United States, right? The surface transportation, the over the road transportation gets to be
Right.
taxed. Port
You can't get it through the
Houston, as you
port, then you
know,
can't
being
move
from
it.
Texas, yeah, and you know you're from Texas, right? And
Mhm.
Houston is an oil and chemical port. They're not a huge containerized port. Now you've got all these container ships coming in there that are being diverted from the West Coast, coming through the Panama and hitting there. It puts a strain on that infrastructure because we're not used to, and the system, the processes, the infrastructure not used to having that many containers and over the road for package or container movement, uh, and having those empties in place to move that. And now you're starting to see those effects, and there doesn't look like there's going to be any much relief in there, as Zach was pointing out, right?
It's just the stress on the entire system is just so excavated and has been for almost an entire year now. I was listening to some stuff on Freightonomics yesterday with Zach and Anthony, and they just said it's only just going to take time. There's really no solution to this problem in the ports other than just letting it dissolve itself in time.
Yeah, it is. Some of it will stay, some of it will go. The infrastructure will catch up and get it down there. Knee jerk reactions is not something that is needed at this particular moment in time, except for maybe emergency things and trying to get things into the country that may be of life threatening or of more
Right.
importance than jokingly fireworks. We were talking about how bad it is, but there's more important things to get into the country and move than fireworks, right? So
Oh, yeah.
we'll just have to let that play out. So, but I guess hey, let's move on to an economic update with our
Anthony
Anthony
Smith.
Smith.
Hi, Michael. Hi, Kaylee. So last time I was on, I had some skepticism in my voice, and that is going to extend to this segment as well for Thursday. So what we had were, of course, as you know, initial jobs claims, which were released for the most recent week and show that there was an increase up to 770,000 Americans that have filed for unemployment benefits throughout the country. So this is a movement up from last week, which was also upwardly revised 25,000 individuals. So that adds to the skepticism in my economist's mind that there is an issue with the data collection and how these numbers are being calculated, but it does show where the overall movement is. Whether or not it's accurate, time will tell. So what we see with those initial jobs claims, again, upward movement, still skeptical about all of the unemployment numbers coming in. The worst of the worst from these numbers show that Pennsylvania had the most really unimpressive unemployment rate, leading the nation right around 6.1%. Beyond that, continued claims moved down, but not by much, and only time will tell again if these numbers have been actually accurately calculated. Moving on to other economic releases, because there are other economic releases besides these initial jobs claims that have come out, and that's going to be housing starts, one that's near and dear to my heart. And what we saw with housing starts, that there was also a downward movement there. This has been an area of the economy that was strong throughout much of 2020, despite the pandemic worries, and is kind of becoming an inflated area right now. I'm not saying that there's a bubble, but from last week's show, there is an area of inflation here with prices still going up and consumers willing to pay some of those prices as inventory levels are at a low, historic lows. And so the other area is, of course, those lumber prices. And it all matters to freight because when we have more housing starts and more construction activity, that's going to lead to more building product materials moving throughout the country via flatbed trailer. And so with that, we have the flatbed outbound tender rejection index that's still staying pretty elevated. And so that's telling me that there's also another area of the economy that's going to include these flatbed capacities really being tightened, and that's going to be manufacturing. So that's telling me that there is indeed some momentum still continuing for manufacturing in the most recent months, while the housing market is cooling off, of course, with these winter weather events. So I'm still have some high expectations for housing overall, not discouraged by 1 or 2 months of downward movement, but I am keeping my eye on it. Permits also moved down for the most recent month, but again, not enough just yet to call off a reversal or call on a reversal. So that's going to do for this Thursday economic update. Michael, Kaylee, back to you.
Anthony Smith, always the skeptic, but it's good to keep things in perspective. And I'm going to say, if you are a buyer or if you are getting ready to build a home, it is not your market right now.
Oh, no, it's definitely not, and the inventory's gone, right?
Hmm.
It comes on the market and it goes. My neighborhood especially is I've seen that, there are 3 or 4 for sale, or they're up for about a week and they're gone.
And they're
I
gone.
was thinking we need to get an Anthony Smith skepticism meter that goes along with each one of these numbers that come out and see where his skepticism level is on each one of these things. He's still bullish on the house market and manufacturing, even though there's a little bit of a downtick on permits, et cetera.
Mhm.
But he's not buying those employment numbers, and I don't blame him. The way we measure employment is kind of silly. I think it's incredibly difficult to do, anyways. Is why we have all these different ways to look at what employment and so on. It's very difficult.
It's pretty hard to track those indexes like that, and that's where things like Sonar comes in handy. Maybe we add that Anthony Smith skepticism index to our Sonar chart. But something that's really important is to track all those indexes, and we actually have our next guest, Russ Jones, CEO and co-founder of Cargo Chief, and he's one of those companies that provides some of that data to kind of get a handle on what the market looks like, really in all aspects of things, right, Michael?
That's exactly right, Russ,
Hey
CEO and
guys,
co-founder. How are you, my friend?
doing very well. How are you guys? It's great catching on to the show today. I love it. I love the just the smooth vibe and just it's taking off. It's really good.
Thanks for being here. We appreciate
Good.
it.
Thank you. We had a rocky start. The first one, we got about halfway through the show. We got about to this point in the show, and then had to vacate the building.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
yeah, there was a suspected gas leak. It wasn't anything. It's just enough to we couldn't take the chance. So, but we're gonna get it. We're gonna get through this one. Russ, introduce yourself and Cargo Chief real quick, please.
Sure. Thank you very much. So, Cargo Chief is focused on helping small and mid-sized third-party logistics companies, freight brokers, and freight forwarders to help them buy truckload capacity more effectively and more efficiently. We have the most comprehensive database of carrier preferences. We know better than anybody else which carriers go between what cities and what days and how often. And really, our goal is to help our customers to identify which lanes they need help on and how to help them maximize their work on those lanes. We help them identify which lanes they don't have good coverage on, which lanes they're paying too much on, and then we offer support and solutions to help them resolve that so they can buy better on those lanes and really manage those lanes better, have pocket carriers, a whole network of carriers. We help them build their network of carriers and to avoid using one and done load board carriers, which are risky.
Yeah, they
So
certainly are. So, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kaylee.
I was going to say, your whole thing is win the market, right? It's all about winning. Tell us a little bit about why it's so important and how you get your customers there to get to that winning number one spot.
Thanks a lot. Well, as you both probably know, there's just incredible demand for trucking capacity with the government record stimulus of money being put into the current economy. Hopefully, our children can pay the debt. You have then no one traveling. You have a lot of people now working from home. All that combines to generate a record demand for a trucking capacity. We think about a container container rates used to be a couple K from Hong Kong to Long Beach. Now it's 7K, and you have record number of boats waiting to unload or ships waiting to unload. Freight rates are up 30% year over year. Carriers are responding by doubling their orders of tractors and doubling the orders of vans. And now, how do you get that capacity? Well, if you're an emerging 3PL trying to grow, or you're small and you're just getting going, you need help. You need data to help you do that. And that's what we do. We really help our clients get access to the most comprehensive database of carrier preferences. We get data from carriers. We get data from payment processors, data from factorers. We get data from clients. So we meld all that together. So when someone types in, say, Atlanta, Miami, bam, now they see a list of over 100 carriers. They can hit backhaul, get the perfect backhaul right down to the city, which our customers are telling us they're saving them 5 to 15%. And they're seeing the carriers that want that lane could be a backhaul lane for that carrier, which is really valuable.
Yeah, that's all excellent stuff, and I love the visibility and transparency that you guys are bringing to the market, and I love watching these advancements happen. I've been in it for about 34 years in the industry in one form or another, mostly operations, but where's pricing going? We have no clue. And then, and really until recently, and still now, many of them looking at the pricing and trying to get, they're looking on historical data. They're relying on that, or relying on, what their carriers are doing right now, or who's demanding what at the specific moment in time. And we all know there's kind of these hangover effects from different events, right? Rates kind of go up and then it'll hang over for a little while because everybody thinks, oh, well, capacity's tight, while it's actually very loose at a certain time. Not that it is right now, just an example. Those type of techniques did not work out so well for people in 2018, 19, or 20, really. So what do they need to be looking at really now? What is the trend? What do you recommend for these people to be looking at to really get a sense of where is pricing going? Where's the market heading right now? You can't use historical data anymore.
I think that's right. I think you see, it seems like the events are becoming more exaggerated, so the market price is becoming more choppy. You see ups and downs, and the more dramatic ups and downs, and it's dynamic. So our customers told us that they had a big issue with pricing and getting what is the current price. And for a 3PL, they might be on 12 to 15% gross margin or net margin from an industry's point of view, but EBITDA margin might be 1 to 3%. So knowing what cost to pay a carrier and what price to sell a shipper is the difference between strong success and total failure. So we said, let's put together a consortium called Lane Master, where everyone submits data anonymously, just the lane, the price, the type of truck, and the pickup date. And then we use our algorithms to analyze that data coming in, and then we produce a real-time rate. And we also then show anonymized transactions. So if I can see what other people are paying for Atlanta to Miami, wow, now that really helps me figure out what I should be paying. And so we've done that. We kicked that off last quarter. We did a beta test with 20 different broker clients. 100% of them converted to paying for the service because they really liked it. And it's rapidly growing. We have a number of partnerships announced already, and a number that are in the works that are really, really exciting. Lots of data coming into the Lane Master Consortium on pricing.
100% conversion rate. That is absolutely incredible as far as a growth standpoint goes. You love to see it. That's winning the market, right? You're winning your clients. Can you give us any inside secrets on maybe who you're working with, or are you guys waiting to announce that a little bit?
Sure. So at a very high level, the data that we get coming into Lane Master is from freight brokers. There's some shippers that are interested in this because they want to try to pick off when they should buy off the spot versus buy off the contract market. We have carrier interest as well. We get information from transportation management system vendors. We have information coming in from factorers. A number of factorers are submitting information. And part of the magic of Lane Master, which I didn't explain, is that it's a consortium. So think of like an REI store or the Land O'Lakes Consortium. So at the end of the month, we take a significant portion of the revenue and we give it back to the members. So we're really generating this whole community about sharing information anonymously. No one wants to share their client details. We don't ask them for that. And then they can see what the current market price is, which is super valuable, especially in today's world where it's choppy.
So you're building that anonymity, and it's kind of a trust relationship, right?
Yeah, well, the clients don't have to submit who their shippers are, who their carriers are. They just say Oakland, Dallas, $2,800, pick up on March 15th, and it was a drive-in. Boom. It's pretty low touch.
Yeah. So, Russ, in this time, there's a lot of people trying to get into the market right now and take advantage of this bull ride, right? This bull rush that we have going on right here. And some are saying, well, it's going to slow down. It's not slowing down. We're not seeing anything slowing down. We're seeing it kind of level out as far as volumes, but in those spikes. And as you mentioned, and we talked about the events of 2018, 19, 20, they seem to be getting more intense. Part of that is also, and a big part of that is that you've got this capacity tightness that the smallest bit of energy or disruption makes bigger ripples in the pond, if you will, right? There's this bigger reaction time that happens. Some of the things that you talk about, and on your website, it talks about, winning the market and how to win those market is partnerships. And you mentioned that you have 100%, you had 100% conversion rate. saw your guns go up, which is nice. We got to show those again. But that's got to be through. It's got to be through added value, right? I mean, you got to talk about that a bit. What are these people as they come into this market and they're trying to get into here? What should they be thinking about as far as partnerships and trying to make themselves go?
Yeah, so we see that for many people, like a payment processor or factorer, they have lots of data, and now the Lane Master Consortium is a way for them to monetize that data. For the brokers and the emerging brokers that aren't, that don't have tens of millions of dollars to spend on freight tech and don't have a team of IT guys focused on freight tech and don't have, processing thousands of loads a day that intimately know the market, they're trying to establish, what should I pay? Now, for the loans they buy, the lanes that they buy every day, they know the market price, but they're going to get a lot of new lanes. And like, what should I be paying Oakland to Dallas? What should I be paying Atlanta, Miami? They don't really know that. So by them becoming part of the Lane Master system and using our C4 platform to help them save time identifying carriers and really organizing carriers and getting their team to behave as a team, helping them organize their freight quotes, they'll start to see a great efficiency. A lot of our clients are telling us that they see a 10 to 20% a greater efficiency in how much freight they can book per day per person. And then you add on to that better buying and better selling. The combination of that can generate a significant ROI. We're talking 20, 30x ROI on freight tech. So people like Cargo Chief are focused on freight tech. Our focus is on small, medium-sized brokers. There are people's focus on freight tech for shippers and freight tech for carriers. Technology is huge. So there's lots of things to go fix. But for our niche of small, medium-sized brokers, our solution generates a very high ROI. We offer a no-charge 14-day trial, and in that trial, well over half the people are like accounts go, this is great, I want to become a client. And by the way, there are little things that we're adding on. We're on version 5 of the product already, as we keep in mind, adding new features every couple, 2-3 weeks in our sprints.
Russ,
excellent stuff. Go ahead, Kaylee.
We're still working it out. And we've got people who want to take advantage and add to that 100% conversion rate. Where should we send them? Where do they need to be going?
Thank you very much. Please come to our website, www.cargochief.com. You'll see a way to sign up. We have a quick demos in 30 minutes. We can quickly show you what the solution is all about. And then you can hop into a no-charge trial. And at the end of the trial, we do ask you for feedback. And we think it's likely you'll become a client like all of our other clients are. And business is rapidly growing as well.
Awesome.
Excellent stuff. Thank you so much, Russ. We'll catch up with you again real soon.
Thanks for the time today, guys. I really appreciate the opportunity.
All right.
Of course. Thank you so much. So, Kaylee, hey, LinkedIn Interactive, and I've totally ignored it. My apologies. But if you want to get on there and talk about Kaylee's dogs barking, I suggested you just embrace it, call them over, and have them speak. They obviously took exception to the lower or the higher rates, the slightly higher rates, but we've got MD Nang from Blythe says hello from Blythewood, South Carolina. Hopefully they're safe over there. Didn't that weather head that way that we had yesterday?
Yep, heading there this afternoon. Goose is an Australian Shepherd, very vocal dog. He likes to talk to me a lot, so I'm sure that he would have a lot to say on Midday Market Update.
Would you throw him a steak? I see him over there on your couch eating a steak or something.
He's hanging out. He got his toy of choice, and it's a quiet one, so he's good now.
Very cool. Let's move on to our next guest. We got co-founders of Enroute.AI, Neil Fernandez and Mike Anthony on here. And welcome to the show, guys. Tell us what you guys are doing.
Hey, well, thanks for having us on, guys. Appreciate it. So I'm Mike Anthony, COO of Enroute.AI, and we're excited to tell you about all about it today. Neil's our founder and CEO and the brain trust behind the company. Neil, maybe we should get started with you just telling them the story of how you started Enroute and why, and we'll talk about where we're going.
Sure, thanks, Mike, and thanks for having us on. So a couple of years ago, I was working for an MIT professor startup doing transportation research, and one of our projects was for a large beer company. And one thing I noticed while on the project was they were having a hard time making those last mile deliveries. And the funny thing was they were using like the state of the art route planning software to plan their routes, but their routes were either always late, or they would skip routes, skip stops on the route to be delivered the next day. And when I looked into why this was happening, it was that the software, which was state of the art, was making certain simplifying assumptions like measuring distance between stops as a crow flies instead of actual road distances. Excuse me. And also assuming that it takes the same amount of time to make a stop in downtown versus the suburbs, or like things like ignoring traffic. So the routes would be optimal on paper, but nowhere close to reality. So I thought, okay, there must be a better way to do it, especially since computing like AWS is becoming so accessible. So I built together something in the next few weeks and showed it to these guys, and they were like, these routes are so much better than what we have. You should build a product. Come back to us when you have a full product. And that's when I decided, okay, let me build this out.
Awesome.
Yep.
Mike, tell us a little bit about your decision to partner up with Neil and how that whole dynamic works with you guys.
Well, it was actually interesting. So we'd actually worked with several people who, when we looked at our respective LinkedIn profiles, I think we knew 50 people in common between the two of us. So we'd actually worked with various people, had a good relationship. We got on the phone. I got on the phone with Neil and back in October, and he started to tell me about Enroute. And I said, well, okay, there's a lot of people in this market. Let me go look at it. So I looked at about 14 different players who had the label of either logistics or last mile or whatever solutions. And when I really dug into it and saw what they could do versus what Neil had, I'm like, wow, this is really something. So I decided, Neil, I'm all in back in November. And what I found with Enroute is it has, I'll call it 6 onlys, if you will. It's the only one that has real routes versus as the crow flies. As the crow flies, people just put a calculation in there, and it's not got nothing to do with reality, as Neil just said. It also captures what I call the fingerprint of the city. Neil coined that term. I think it's a great term. We get down to micro addressing and geofencing so that we map out very succinctly what's going on in a particular city. So, for example, you may use Google Maps or Waze to get to 500 Main Street, and that's with the address, but the delivery is all the way around to the back of the building, which if you're in Manhattan at rush hour, that just costs you 45 minutes. So the software really learns in a lot of detail. The third thing that's unique about Enroute is that it has real-time updating. So if there's a traffic problem or an accident, anything like that, the AI learns and it re-optimizes the entire route constantly so that you always get an optimal shortest delivery or fastest delivery, depending on what the parameters are for your business. And then we found that he's got this capability of custom proof of delivery. So a lot of people have photos or signatures, but he can. This software actually can do counts. It can do weight. It can do temperature, whatever really the customer wants, which is very unique. And then they do. We tend to do custom dashboards for each customer. And the last only, which I thought was very different from most software companies, is. Because Neil, I don't know if I told you guys this, but Neil wrote this software sitting in a company that does deliveries. So he's working all along with dispatchers out on trucks and vehicles doing deliveries. So it's written so that, it's very user friendly. But he actually, the last feature that I think is an only is that the drivers themselves actually rate the delivery. So often as a driver get to a place where the shipping dock isn't ready for them, or the customer went somewhere and they're wasting their time. So this gives drivers some feedback on what is that delivery experience like for them so that it can be improved or that customer can in fact get charged for that waiting time.
Right. So Mike, and Neil, so that's a good point. You're writing this while you're actually out on road with the drivers, et cetera. And the way you described what this, I think you said it was a major beer company or whatever it was, a distributor, was you described there, it was very generic, very vanilla, very just, okay, it's A to B, and they didn't think it through very, very much. So there wasn't that human sentiment, that human intelligence that's there. And are you designing this and to be a living, breathing thing to develop as that sentiment is ingested into it? Is that the idea of having the drivers being able to update this? And are there other inputs in there to make this live and breathe? So like we talked about before, Mike, when you're in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, if you're going the wrong way at the wrong time of day, you could be hours out of route. You're going to accidentally go through a tunnel and across a bridge and through a mountain, and you're done. You know, those last 10 deliveries aren't happening. Is it designed to ingest that type of information?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you the example I'll use, and I'll let Neil kick in too. Is, you know, I'm in Boston, and every late summer, early fall in Boston, somebody rents a truck that's 14 feet high and tries to take it on Storrow Drive where the bridges are 12 feet high. And if you've been stuck in that, you've been stuck in that for 2 days. Well, part of what Neil's software does is say, does this characteristics of this vehicle, will it fit in the infrastructure? Okay. And there's other examples. You want to expound on that a little more, Neil?
Yeah, sure. I'll probably take a step back. To your point, we designed the software to be very intuitive. When I used to do transportation projects, you would need to not only buy the software, but also buy 3 months of consultant time, or you actually need a software engineer to use the software. So when I was working, like Mike said, at our beta clients' offices, I used to see how dispatchers do their routes, plan their routes every day, or how the drivers, for example, have these tribal knowledge embedded in their head, where the entrances are, like enter through the red door, or this is a good parking spot, and all that information somehow doesn't get captured with existing systems. And now coming to your data question. So we continuously capture data when the driver's on the route, and then our algorithms learn where the best parking spot is, or what areas to avoid for traffic. Like, for example, downtown Boston at 3 p.m., deliveries there shouldn't be made during the rush hour. We continuously learn over time. So if you're planning a route today versus the exact same route tomorrow, our software will make it slightly better based on what we learned on the previous day. So we are continuously learning.
So you guys mentioned that ability of the drivers to kind of rank and review where they're delivering. Is that data accessible to people who want it? So say like, I've got a driver who dropped off at this one warehouse and they just had a god awful time. Can the people at that warehouse see that review and then say, hey, we need to change X, Y, and Z to be better for our drivers? Is that a service that you guys could kind of offer with your software?
Right now, we offer it only for the business that uses our software, so that they can negotiate better rates or have a conversation with their end customer. But that's a good idea. We might include that in our future offering.
There you go.
It's like a Yelp review for a drop off.
Yeah, you could do that could be one of the analytic reports that you give to your customers. Hey, our drivers on average are wasting 30 minutes every delivery. You need to change that, or we're going to charge you for that 30 minutes of time.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love the flexibility that you guys have in developing this thing. So what's next for you guys?
So where we are now, we've got 5 beta customers now. We're trying to get up to 10. And the reason being, we're going to go to the broader market probably another 2 months. But what we want to get is 10 beta customers where we're getting good feedback on the product, things they'd like to see changed, altered, tweaked a little bit, et cetera. We like them to track the business benefits, because one of the things we're trying to do is say, here's the benefit of this software. So in terms of ROI, scale, customer satisfaction, fuel savings, all of those kinds of metrics that we're seeing. If you go to our website, you'll see we've got some savings on there, but it's only for 3 customers. So we'd really like to have a population of 10 to say, hey, look, we know this has got some legs to it. It shows some real value, a real payback, a real improvement in customer sat.
That's awesome to see.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, it's excellent stuff. So people want to join, want to be in this beta. I mean, this is a very, very interesting in space, especially right now as we have, e-commerce is exploding. This is a big thing. The innovations are needed. That's why I really want to bring you guys on and highlight this, because like we know in truckload and over the road, a lot of the capacity issue is a lack of efficiency. There's a lot of empty air going down the road, and there's capacity that is out of flux with where the market is. We saw that at the beginning of the pandemic and how things changed, right? Not only did the markets fracture, but you also had companies start doing things that they never did before, right? And delivering to markets that they never had before. You had auto manufacturers making equipment, health equipment, right? So that's a huge change, and now there's this huge change in the final mile and residential, and even the final mile B2B is changing, and where those are coming from. So it's a great thing. How do people get involved with this and start to help you guys figure this out and be in this beta?
Sure. Yeah. So we have a website where you can register for a beta. It's Enroute, Enroute.AI. We have all our features listed there, and also a form to sign up if you're interested in our beta. We'd love to have you on.
Excellent.
Awesome, guys.
Excellent.
Thanks for being here, and we'll have to check in with you guys in a couple months. Maybe you guys have a couple more beta customers and get onto that broader market. We'd love to talk to you guys again.
That'd be great. Thanks for the time.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Wow,
Kaylee, what do you think about that stuff? I love the innovation. I like the innovative nature of it. I like the inputs. I love the way that they're trying to build this out to be living, breathing. It's really what's needed in just every aspect of logistics, right?
So my boyfriend is a broker, and he does cradle to grave. And I've got to say, the majority of phone calls that he gets after hours or on the weekends are from drivers being like, hey, I'm at the drop off, the address that Google Maps is telling me where to go, but I've got no idea where to go from this. What do I take this turn? Do I go in this gate? And it sounds like that's kind of the problem that they're getting ready, that they're really trying to alleviate, is trying to get that very last mile, last 100 feet of information for those drivers to kind of cut down on those inefficiencies. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it really is, and there's others out there like Doc 411, et cetera, that have that input from the driver, so drivers can go in there and use it. But yeah, building that into the techniques of what's going on, and addresses stink. If you can bring this in, especially in deliveries and truckload, they're awful because you get You get there and there's like 6 different companies in this huge warehouse. Are you going to warehouse A, B, C, D, dot? Where are you going? You have no idea, and then it's detention times, delay times, you weren't there on time, all these different accessorial charges that you got to argue through, and how many billions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars, I forget what the number is, that's tied up every year in capital in the U.S. over arguments over whether this charge or that charge is reasonable or not. It's absolutely crazy to try and finalize those contracts and execute them at the end.
Maybe they'll take my idea and run with it, like a Yelp for truck drivers.
I thought that was brilliant. I think you should charge them some consulting fees for that. I witnessed it, and I think your minimum should be at least $400 for that idea. I think it was a great, or get royalties in perpetuity or something. You could be Mrs. Wonderful or whatever it is.
I'm going to start my own freight tech company, and it's just going to be a space where your drivers review the warehouses that they drop off. And then, you know what? If you're a receiver, you're going to subscribe to my database and figure out, hey, what can we do better?
Yeah, absolutely. So we got, hey, listen, if you want to catch any of our shows, our events, etc., where do they go? They go to FreightWaves. They can go to FreightWaves TV app, FreightWaves.com, or download podcasts like What the Truck. Yesterday was a great show with What the Truck. You can catch those wherever you download your favorite podcasts. We had Brett Suma, who is the chief officer at Loadsmith out in Colorado, talking about how they how some asset guys, and they brought in non-assets and starting to build up the brokers, but also how they're working with the community out in California to help with sustainability, sourcing CNG trucks, et cetera. We also had Chris Peckman, founder and CEO at Freight Plus, and Mars Goods and Stan de Clau from Hart Hyperloop, a Dutch-based Hyperloop, much like Virgin Atlantic. They're going to be moving freight by Hyperloop. Kaylee, what do you think about that?
That is like way off of my brain. That sounds like something that belongs on the SpaceWave stage. And I've got to say, when we rolled SpaceWaves in December, I was like mind blown, because the idea of logistics in space is just wild to me, wild and crazy.
Oh, yeah. The first time I talked to Mark Weiss, had lunch with him, Dooner and I had lunch with him a little over a year ago. He's like, hey, I'm director of deep space logistics for NASA. It's like, that is the most badass title I've ever heard in my life.
No kidding.
And then he started talking about ore barges and customs stations, et cetera, in space. And he had me hooked. That is really interesting stuff. I tell you what, though, we've got some great stuff coming up. You mentioned one of our events on March 24th. We have a virtual event. It is the 3PL Summit. which is going to be great, which is next week. And then next year we have the Coachella Freight, the F3, which is in November.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah. November 8th through the 9th, the Coachella Freight. Go there, get involved. It's going to be killer. We're going to have music. We're going to have all these different events, travel around the city of Chattanooga with it, and witness firsthand the new